Okay, well, let's just go to some of the other results. So we did the Friday night game, Brighton 3, Chelsea 0, which was a really good game to work on. Brighton were by far the better team. I said on the night it's the worst I've seen Chelsea all season, almost worryingly bad. And I was sort of thinking when I got home about the Chelsea team, and I know we talk a lot and make note that it's a young team, it's an inexperienced team. It's finding the way, and early in the season we talked about, they're starting to find a way and they're going to have to go through a few things. But I thought this was one of those performances, Dan, where I'd have been a bit alarmed if I was in charge, or I'd have been a bit alarmed if I was playing, because they didn't really turn up. They didn't really try and get back in the game. I couldn't see, at no point could I really see Chelsea's threat in the game. And still, they've got incredible talents all in the different parts of the pitch. I know some of it's young, and I know some of them have got to learn about the nuances of the game. But I thought it was a really disappointing night for Chelsea and Enzo Maresca.
Yeah, it wasn't. The biggest concern for me was that they'd played Brighton 6 days previous in the FA Cup, and they struggled then. So we're waiting for the game to begin. Obviously, the two systems that the teams are going to play, but I'm thinking, right, what are Chelsea going to do different? Because they've got to play differently than what they did in the FA Cup, where, Brighton, okay, the game was 2-1, but it could have been more for Brighton. They didn't change anything. They did exactly the same thing. Like when Kung Fu's playing as a centre forward, but he's dropping and getting in Cole Palmer's way. And, is that a naivety from the young players, from the manager who wasn't able to adjust things? But I'm with you. That was, without doubt, I think Chelsea's worst performance of the season. And arguably for Brighton, especially defensively, they'd have been like, they probably could have taken their tops off and just hung them back up. Because they had so little to do. Yeah, everything was in front of them. There's...
I'm sure you've had the same, Dan, I'm sure you've had the same, and it probably harks back to our first conversation at Manchester United and culture. And I was thinking about it like Chelsea in one of those days, and sometimes the state of the season now, Chelsea have got to be careful it doesn't drift. They at one point, I think 8 weeks ago, they could have played Everton and gone top of the table. Now they're sitting in sixth in the table, and maybe sixth is somewhere where they should be, but because they've started so well and we've seen the good football, we kind of expect to know that that's the level. And to that point, I was thinking about it on Friday when I got back, and I thought, that's the kind of day, like, if we'd have had that match on a Friday, the next day, if we're in training, warming down the next morning, or the next time we're at the training ground, I think it'd be one of those days when I would have called a meeting and not have told the manager, not have told the coaches, and we'd all grab a cup of tea, we'd lock ourselves in the dressing room, we'd just have a chat, and it doesn't have to be, physical, it doesn't have to be over vocal, but just a conversation amongst the group that sets a standard and resets and talks about what we're trying to achieve, and that, we could get a top four finish if we really push in, but we've got to go for it now. And just, it's a bit of that what you talked about, Dan, but collectively bringing that group together. Now, I don't know who that might be. Is it a Reece James? Is it a Cole Palmer? Is it a Neto who might have been around and seen it and know, or be able to say, come on, guys, we're batting this? But I just feel like I felt every now and then, as a player, we needed one of those meetings to remind ourselves and reset ourselves and set our standards. And I just felt that Chelsea performance at Brighton was one of those nights where I'd love to hear that somebody just pulled a meeting and talked to players. And you've been in a club. Sometimes the gaffer wants to know, the manager wants to know. Other times, the gaffer doesn't really have to know about that. This is between you, the lads, and I know you're smiling because you've probably, during your career, you've probably had 6 or 7 of those where, they're really important. And I used to think they helped us.
Yeah, they do. They help massively. And like you say, when people say, all right, all the lads are all going to get together and we're going to close the doors and have this meeting. Like you say, it doesn't have to be the angry ones. Yeah. Okay, there are some where it gets very heated, and quite rightly so. But other times it's just, just to try and figure things out.
Yeah.
But the problem that you have here with this Chelsea squad, and I go back to Alan Hansen, his famous quote years and years ago when he said, Manchester United, you'll never win anything with kids.
Yeah.
And he got a lot. He got a lot of criticism for that, but he was true. It was right. It was true what he said. It's not that the young players can't win titles, but it's who they're surrounded by. And within that young group at Manchester United that came through, you had the Bruces, you had the Pallisters, you had Cantonars, you had Roy Keanes and people like that, Paul Inces. And this Chelsea dressing room doesn't have that. So it's always brilliant when you see young players coming through. But it's like, I remember as I got older, so when I was younger, I wouldn't be the one calling the meetings. I'd be the one going to the meetings, told that we had to go to, that we had to go to meeting. But then as I got older, when I got to 27, 28, 29, then I'd had the experience and I had the know-how to actually call a meeting myself because I was one of the senior players. But the thing I would ask you, Robbie, when you look at that Chelsea squad at the moment, other than maybe the goalkeeper in Sanchez and maybe Tosin, who are the senior players that you'd look at and go, right, they could call a meeting?
I think you say senior, and I would say senior inverted brackets. I don't think it always has to be the oldest player, the most experienced. I think a Cole Palmer could stand in that dressing room because of the respect he'd have and his value and quality to the group. I think he could do it. I think maybe didn't play, but a Nicholas Jackson, if he decided he wanted to do it, a Neto maybe on one side of the pitch. You know, there's some others that might. Enzo possibly could do it. So I do get you, and it has to be usually it's a different personality and a certain type. But I don't necessarily think it always has to be the oldest, most experienced guy. It can be somebody else who just feels it and talks. And sometimes it's some of them last 10 minutes, some of them last an hour. But, you know, it's sometimes just putting things out there so everybody knows, we reset and then we go again. And I just like to think that Chelsea may have somebody in the dressing room or may look to get somebody in the dressing room who can take that role, because that's where I feel they are now. I think they're a bit of a crossroads in this season. You know, things could go either way for them. I mean, Europa Conference League is something they're in that, you know, many have said, you know, they could easily win with the quality of squad. Would that really be the level that they're talking about, even though it's winning a trophy? Champions League is really, I think, the minimum that they're looking for, and that means that this year a top 5 spot.
Yeah. So, and when you're talking about the younger players, I think one of the big things is that, and the reason I say about the young players not having that game management side of things is because it all comes from experience. You know, Chelsea have got some unbelievable players, incredible players that are going to go on to be, I think some are going to go on to be world class. But in order to have that experience, that comes through the amount of games you're playing, the ups and downs that you're having. And I just think that's where they're a little bit lost at the moment. It's like they take the lead and it's like, right, what do we do now? Do we go to extend the lead or do we have what we hold? And I think that that's something you can go and get the best young players in the world, but one thing you can't buy is experience. And the one thing I would say about Chelsea is they don't look as though they're going to be changing their their philosophies in terms of when it comes to bringing players in.
No, for sure. But it's something they're going to have to do, obviously, as well. It's a youngish manager, his first rodeo in the Premier League. He's had 1 year at Leicester and 7 months, 8 months at Chelsea. So very young in his career. But, we'll see how Chelsea go and can they find one of those top 5 spots that might bring them Champions League football next season.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.